Was the it's kind of funny. Today was the biggest ever ratio of people's note takers and bots joining as opposed to people. I saw two real humans and 17 note takers or recorders tried to join the meeting. It was freaking. I was sitting there just removing note takers, saying, "Is there any real people going to come on this week?" And at least a couple of you came along, and I'll keep the window open. I know normally more, join as we go along here. Georgetta, great to see you again. You're on pretty much every one of my workshops, damn near every week. I always see you there picking up and learning and implementing something new. So that's great. Tara, I think you and I just met recently and had a one-on-one call together not long ago. And what I'm going to cover here today, a couple of you guys, Keith, you are also newer into the program. I think we just met recently, if I'm not mistaken. So I know a couple of you guys, this might be your first or second workshop. I think, Tara, you may have been on Tara. I did that wrong. You were on mine last week, if I'm not mistaken, and then we met one-on-one. And then Keith, I think you and I just met recently as well. I'm not sure if you've been on my workshops yet. But again, what I
No, this will
cover,
be my first time.
great. And I'll also open up time for a Q&A. So as we go, number one, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And I'm also going to leave a time open where I'm going to call on you guys, and anything that you want me to go over or cover, we will dive into that. But as I was saying, generally on these workshops, and kind of my area of expertise is all around selling the data. And those are the kind of tips and pointers and topics that I cover in these workshops. So again, everything to do from the pricing, positioning, packaging, overcoming objections. Sometimes we come on here and do little role play segments. Every once in a while, it's been a little while since one of you guys have done this, but sometimes some of you guys that are, actively trying to close deals and taking sales calls will send me some of your recordings and I'll do a call audit or a breakdown. And sometimes we're just kind of giving you more resources and high-level sales trainings. And I actually have something new I want to go over today. So only the people, well, actually, some of the people might notice where I added this on the document, but pretty much just the people that are on this call today are going to have access to this new framework, unless they're very, very crafty and go and dig for it, or they watch this replay in school when I post this. Just so you guys know, every workshop I ever run is within the school channel that later that day, if you ever need to go back into the sales channel. So when you look at the different channels we have like the announcements, the wins and case studies, the one in sales. If you scroll back, you'll see all my recordings in there. And I typically upload those to my YouTube channel as well. So if you're watching on the replay, YouTube, or in school, and you really want this framework and it will help the document I'm going to cover, you're going to have to message me and ask for it specifically. But everybody, this new stuff I'm going over, the link and the information is all going to be given to you guys here today. So yeah, that's going to be kind of fun to go over and through, at least from my perspective. So I'm going to dive right into things. Now, everybody that's on this call, specifically, again, there's only a handful, only 3 people or so. Everybody that's on this call has already received, and I've gone over this document with you. So this is the seller resources for closing deals. This is a document I bring up on every week's workshop because pretty much every week we have new members. And you two, specifically Tara and Keith, we met within the last week or so. And that email I sent you after our call, this is included in there, just so you know. And I go through this weekly. Georgetta's heard me do this 100 times. So this is all going to be just kind of, just kind of repetitive garbage, unfortunately. But you will see number 9 was never on here. And as it says, added today. Now, ironically, 9/9 is also my birthday. Yes, today's my birthday. I decided to work and still share my time with my great Audience Lab clients. So I'm here bringing it to you and bringing you something new. So on my birthday, you guys are going to get a gift too. But when I first put this together, we had 6 resources. And then as you guys ask for certain things, they get added on here, especially if I think they're going to be really, really applicable. And this document, again, as I cover all the time when I talk about it, is everything you need to build out your data as a service sales process, whether you have an existing agency and you're already taking calls or whether you're starting from scratch. So again, number 1 is a little about the sales process that I recommend in this doc. I just said put it in kind of bullet point, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3 of what you should do to build out your sales process. Number 2 is a tutorial where I go over that and I go into a bit more depth, right? For a document's sake, I like to keep stuff in rather short definition form. So within the tutorial, I will go and elaborate on some of those things, basic questions that I know most people would ask. And I can also screen share and go through and show you what those different parts of the sales process look like in the different, part of our funnel and our sales process. So it gives you a little more visual to go with it and helps people. what I found. Number three, again, current ads, email creative, and email copy, short form, long form, and different ones we've had success with. Now, I only go through and update that pretty much quarterly, a few times a year, and I'm slated to do that like anytime. I did swap out and update some of our ad campaigns, but we have a couple new email copy or email templates and creative that we've had some pretty good success with that haven't been updated. So I'll be doing that here within the next, before the end of the month, but probably within the next week or so. I'll have some more updated stuff there. That's always there, but I do go in and change it and update it, you know, probably 3-4 times a year. Number 4 and 5 are the scripts and frameworks I recommend. You'll see when we go through the document, I recommend a 2-call process. Number 4 is your script for call 1. Number 5 is your script for call 2. Now, that's what we're going to talk a little bit about, and I give you guys an updated version, what we're going to cover today. And the new piece I talked about in here is number 9 on this particular document. And again, that was never there before today. So number 6 on my screen, just going in order. Everybody's probably already aware of this, but that's a copy of the Authority slide pitch deck we give you guys to use on your sales calls. So again, nothing's branded to Audience Lab. Download your own copy. Make your own copy, and then just swap out the first slide with your own company name, branding, image, likeness, whatever. And then you get a short little pitch deck that you can use to show your market how we can go target their ideal audience, how we can take that audience and loop it into their ad campaigns, how we can resolve the identities of their bounce visitors, leverage, you know, a half dozen or a dozen different case studies that we provided you there with people got success off of the platform. Number 7, going a little more in depth about the pixel pricing. And again, the tool that I cover in that tutorial is called our Pixel Forecast Calculator. Some of you guys are familiar with it. Some of you may not be. That's what I cover in that video, and link down in the description is the updated link to that. I actually realized the link I had there in the past, which I'm glad I go through and kind of troubleshoot all my links every once in a while, went to a private one where you guys still needed, you know, approval and you had to request. So I updated that and make sure everybody in there could just access the link. So if you tried to access the Pixel calculator in the past and it said you needed permission or whatever, you had to wait, that link's been updated and you get instant access to it. So that's down in the description of that video. Number 8, maybe 20 or so of my sales call recordings, so you guys can listen to how I talk, verbiage, terminology, you know, style, and how I move deals forward in the process or close them. And then lastly, what just got updated today is the new Audience Lab sales script that we've kind of taken our main one that's been here for some time and streamlined it and made a couple edits and adaptations. You know, again, telling you guys my background and my expertise and kind of where I got my start was in the high ticket sales space for some other companies initially. And then I was always a top producer in my own companies until I got to a point where, you know, I would hire out and build a full-time team and just oversee them, as goes in Audience Lab. Outside of a couple of weeks per quarter where I, you know, purposely block off some other duties and adjust myself back into the sales process, I don't really close a lot of deals or take a whole ton of sales calls. And that definitely isn't my full-time or main role the way it was when I first got started. But as I always like to say, over the years, I've noticed a lot of different, you know, tweaks and adjustments and subtleties and nuances in this space. And that's why I always like to be doing it. That's why, yes, I could be hands off and never take a sales call again. Number 1, I enjoy sales calls and I feel like I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it. Number 2, as somebody that's always doing high-level sales training for our DaaS clients, I run another company called the Sales Lab. I always feel like I would be a hypocrite if I stopped taking sales calls but keep teaching it. I really don't like when people do that. They teach something and they don't actively do it. And if I don't like it, I don't want to become that, right? And I know other people don't like it, so I'm not going to do it, for one. But I truly enjoy taking sales calls. And to be honest with you guys, I take more outside of Audience Lab than I do inside Audience Lab. And just for a little context, what does that mean? My other company, Sales Lab, businesses hire me to come in and build them a sales team and a process and the right talent and the metrics and the tracking and the accountability and the team leadership and the consistent mentorship and development of reps. And when I do that, I almost always dive in and record myself closing deals in the offer before I ever recruit reps. Again, as a sales trainer and a recruiter and a team builder in some capacities, I would hate to promise reps that this is a great offer to close in if I can't close deals. So I go in there first and literally I gauge the, you know, the quality of the leads. If we're getting very poor quality leads, I don't really want to put my name and my reputation on the line and tell people, hey, this is a good offer where you're going to have quality leads. If we have a shitty show rate, I don't want to say to a rep, we can fill your calendar with 8 calls per day, but only 2 of them are going to show up, and whisper that or put it in the fine print, right? So I go in and really make sure that this company is already somewhat established and has the foundations. So a proven rep like me can get in there and close deals. And if that's the case, I can make it streamlined. So somebody with less skill set than me going through my training and my process can come in and close deals. And then I feel confident about building a team. So that's what I mean by I probably close more deals outside of Audience Lab than in. I do for my done for you clients. I always go in and I close the first 3 to 5 deals in any offer that I take on an account in. Sometimes could be more than that, but usually about 3 to 5. And I have a clear enough process and enough recordings and transcripts broken down so I can then, build a team and a process and, trickle that training down and what I did to be successful to the other reps in the offer. So why I go on to say that and give you a little more context is because this new script is similar to the past framework, but again, over the past couple of years, there's been differences in the space. Things are more saturated. Some people are using similar scripts and phrases. So we're always adapting and evolving. And I think this new script we're about to go over is a bit more trimmed down and just more efficient and effective and streamlined, especially for B2B sales. That's what people want now, right? Keith, thank you for the birthday wishes in the chat, but that's what people want now, right? They want straightforward, just straight shooting. And that doesn't mean get on a call and dive right to the price. That's not what I'm saying. But they also don't want to feel like you're getting on a call to interview and interrogate them. They don't want to feel like they're going through a checklist of the questions you're required to ask. How much revenue do you make, Bob? How many leads are you currently getting? How many would you like to be getting? Like, it just feels all redundant and robotic, and people tune out to that. Whatever we can do to have the highest engagement, attention on us, during a sales call, and to reduce or limit sales restriction and just keep everybody in a positive, smiling, yes, agreeable attitude. That's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish and why I go and make tweaks in my frameworks. And usually it's when I see it from afar, meaning I'm riding on a call overseeing somebody use the framework, and I notice the prospect is sitting there bored, twiddling their thumbs. They're tuning out. They're not focused, right? When I start to notice all that stuff, I go back and see what part of the script or the framework that's happening in. And then I can kind of assess why that's happening. And then I can say, all right, well, if we set it like this, it might be a little more appealing or more attractive, or might create more intrigue or curiosity or whatever that is to get them to kind of, buck up a bit and have their eyeballs on the screen focused on the presenter and the information that you're covering. So I'm going to cover a bit again. I know some of you guys hopped on after I started this explanation and I was already kind of going over. So this document, which I will go drop in the chat now for anybody that doesn't have it, or you have it, in an old email, because I have just updated it with a brand new resource and asset. And that's what I'm kind of going to run some training and go over on here momentarily. But let me just go drop this in the chat for everybody first. And again, number 9 is new and was just added today. And that's what I'm about to cover and go over and maybe point out some of the differences between the main framework that was designed and built, number 5 on my screen. Geez, I probably wrote that in about 2022, adjusted it again in 23, and probably haven't done a real lot with that since probably 2 years ago. It's probably late 23, early 24, the last time I made a lot of, many or any real tweaks to that. Now, the reason for that is because it's been performing and working, and you don't really need to make any tweaks. And even the new script, you're still going to see it's within the same structure and the same framework, but there's just going to be subtle shifts, different, nuances and intricacies to it that I picked up through a lot of research and a lot of sales calls. So really quickly, I'm going to go over this, and then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. Currently, if you have any questions on anything I was covering or anything you want me to go into more depth, just either type your question in the chat or put the number 1 in the chat, and I will know to call on you, and you can unmute. And do that throughout, my whole time here. If you have a question that comes up or you want me to call on you, even if I'm mid-sentence, type it in, and I will get to you either when I finish whatever segment of the script I'm on, or just toward the end when I kind of leave time for a Q&A. So yeah, utilize the chat for that. I will check back to that. And I'm just going to kind of go into this. So first off, you're going to see on the left side that there's a few different tabs there. And I want you guys to have access to all of this. Now, this is kind of, again, within my basic sales lab, nothing changes within my values or my style or how I view sales. I'm always going to build every framework and every script from an ethical, integral, solution-based sales process. It still all dials back to that. I never build my sales scripts to kind of strong arm people and steamboat them and kind of force people into making a decision. That's when we're almost twisting people's arms to get them to take an action that ultimately they're going to have buyer's remorse for almost immediately, next day, or first time they get stuck or don't get an ideal result or hit an ideal expectation. They're going to be looking to cancel because we didn't really do the process right. enroll them for the right reasons, and we kind of force them into a decision that they weren't on board with. I give people the opportunity to make a decision for themselves that they feel 100% confident is the best decision for themselves, their business, what have you. Now, this is B2B sales, and we're going to talk more about the benefit to their business than maybe to themselves personally, which would be more of a B2C offer, right? If we're doing weight loss or fitness or mental health, like that's more about my personal well-being and my personal evolution. I go about that a little different. Now, a lot of the same philosophy and structure and psychology doesn't really change between B2C and B2B. I think how direct you can be and how much more analytical driven as opposed to emotional driven are the biggest differentiators between a B2C offer and a B2B. Now, pretty much everybody on this call, you guys are primarily selling B2B. I know some of you might have had offers and expertise prior to this. You may kind of split your time between your DaaS agency or whatever agency you're running, and maybe some other personal types of, again, skills or passions that you have and teach. Like some of you guys, I don't know if anybody on this call, but I know some of our clients, they also run coaching offers and consulting offers and info offers that are could be B2C, right? So that's why I was just talking a little about some of the differences. And again, the main difference between B2B and B2C, I think, is more analytical versus more of an emotional sale. And I just think it's more about letting them talk and building a relationship in B2C sales, where B2B is just, it's more, an assessing process, showing that you're injecting some value into the market and some suggestions or new solutions that they haven't already heard about, haven't already tried. And in many ways, I think this is, again, similar to B2C and B2B, but we're kind of always showing people we can do stuff for them. We can do it better than them. We can do it faster than them, or we can do it for a lower cost than they're currently doing it. Like, we're always trying to show one or a combination of those four things with pretty much all of our services, but specifically B2B and agency services. I would say that's always the case. We're either going to do it better, we're going to do it faster, we're going to do it cheaper, or we're going to do it for you, right? It's one or a combination of those four things that we're kind of always offering. So again, now I'm going to start to go through some of the framework, and then I'll check back to the chat for any questions, and I'll leave time open for a Q&A. But obviously, we always start with an opening, right? And I like to call it an icebreaker, and it can be a number of things. Hey, where are you calling in from? How's your day going? How's the weather? Oh, I see that poster of the Red Sox behind you. Are you from Boston? Whatever, right? We all have our own icebreakers. That's got to be personality. I'm not saying follow my script here and say to everybody, hey, how's your day going? I left that one as basic as I could. You guys can all adapt and create your own icebreaker, right? And then we normally go into something like, awesome, Bob. Well, thanks for making the time here today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you came through one of our paid ads and you clicked on that, and that's kind of how you got to this call. Yeah, Ray, that's right. So what am I doing there? And guys, that might be different for all of us. We're not all running Facebook ads. Not all our clients come in from that. So number one, that does identify and isolate where they came from. And number two, if we're running multiple acquisition channels, like we do here at Audience Lab, a vast majority, actually not even a vast majority, probably, yeah, it's still a pretty good majority, probably about 60% of the calls that end up on my rep's calendar do come through our ads. So when they say this, 40% of the time, the prospect is likely to say, no, it actually wasn't through a Facebook ad. I saw your recent email campaign. I attended Adam's workshop last week. I saw your email campaign. I was on your social media. I saw, and we do have an organic department, I saw one of your recent clips and I clicked the call to action under that. So they can come in from a number of ways, but it's always good because your sales department and marketing department, and again, for some of you people that kind of a one or two man operation and you do it all, regardless if you do it all, you have team members, those departments need to talk to one another. The feedback loop between marketing and sales is really the lifeblood for a business that's going to dictate whether it survives and whether it thrives. If there's no communication, if there's no feedback from marketing to sales, or even if you're doing it all yourself and you're not just kind of determining the two or differentiating the two, I should say, and kind of pointing out what's going wrong in one of the other processes, they're kind of always going to be butting heads. And there are a lot of companies I work with that hire me specifically in like the sales lab segment, where marketing and sales are butting heads and there is no communication, and they're wondering why there's all these broken, metrics, for lack of a better phrase. I don't want to say even all the systems and processes, but the conversions and the results and the revenue aren't there. It's usually from, sales and marketing butting heads. And I didn't realize it when I first started that I was marketing and I was sales, and I wasn't stepping back and looking at it from that viewpoint and from that lens and being like, oh, marketing Ray said this, but then sales Ray said this. They don't align, right? I was just kind of doing my thing and not really. So now, as I've grown, whether it be myself or with a team, I'm always kind of looking back and looking at the marketing feedback, the sales feedback. Are they in alignment? Do they kind of connect I mean, I just said alignment, but do they kind of connect sequentially with one another? Is it fluent from what you saw in my ad or my email, what you clicked on and what you got on here to learn about? Is that 100% kind of in alignment, right? So again, we're just isolating where people came from and getting a little feedback, which is always good. And then next, no matter how long you guys have been running this stuff, I know all of you guys haven't been around as long as Audience Lab. Now, some of your agencies might be older, so don't think just because I said that some of you guys haven't been running business longer. We're still only 3 or 4 years old here at Audience Lab, so we're not super old. But I know a lot of you guys have started up your agency in that last time frame or less. But don't think just because you don't have a long time in business or a ton of content out there, you can't still ask this question. I still would be asking this regardless of how new my agency was, just to get a little more feedback. Sometimes they might just say, oh, Ray, I watched your 10-minute starting my agency from scratch video, right? They might tell me about a specific video, and because I know what I covered in there, I kind of already know what the prospect knows. Now back to some PDocs lessons in the past, and some of you guys that have been on some of my live streams that I've taught on this. One thing I always say is it's very, very important to know what the prospect knows. Because when we know what they know, we can kind of leave that breadcrumb trail to what they don't know and kind of get them to have those epiphanies and those light bulb moments in their head. So this is just kind of solidifying what they already know about us. Now, I get a lot of different answers when I ask this. It could be, I clicked on your ad yesterday, Ray. I know nothing about you than the 4-minute video I watched. Or it could be, I opted into a workshop a year ago and I've been stalking your guys' content for the last year, right? And anything in between that end of the spectrum. But again, as you guys know, and it's pretty much common sense, the longer they've been following you, the more content they've digested, the easier the sales process and the smoother your conversation can go, and usually the less explanatory aspect of the sales process. I love when content does the heavy lifting for my sales guys, whether that's me on a call or a team member, and all they have to really do is dive into the demo portion because this guy's already educated about our platform, our solution, and we can kind of get a little gist, verify his business numbers and their certain level of sophistication or how established they are, and then we can start to dive into solutions really, really quickly, right? So again, cool. How long have you been watching us here at Audience Lab? Let them answer. Sweet. Out of curiosity, what do you actually know about us and what we offer? Give it to me straight, man. No need to hold back or pretend. Well, Ray, I know you guys are a data company. From my recollection, you offer some first market intent driven in-market audiences. And that's kind of what I know about you, but I don't really know what that means, right? So instead of diving right into what that means there, right? Normally they're going to tell us, I know a little about what you do, but I don't know the full extent of it. Now, I just worded that very specific and then very general following that, right? That's just, I said the same thing twice, but we're always going to hear it a little different. So what I say after that is like, perfect, here's the game plan. I'm going to break down exactly how our system works, what we've built, and how people like yourselves are getting real results in it day in and day out. If it makes sense and you feel there's a fit at any time, that would stop, or if you feel there's a fit, is there anything that would stop you from jumping in today, right? So very early on, before I even get to the discovery phase, we're already setting up ourselves for a tie down and what will later become the soft yes, but we're tying it down now. And we're also asking, if it makes sense and you feel it's a fit, is there anything that would stop you from moving forward? Some of you guys know specifically what I'm talking about with that lingo, and then some of you don't, and I'll break it down. The flip side of that, what a lot of people say is, if everything makes sense, would you move forward today? And most people just nod their head and say yes, and they don't really think about it. But if you ask if there's anything that would stop you, they actually think about it before they answer, and they have to say, no, there's nothing that would stop me. It's a little different than really not thinking about something and just nodding your head. So guys, from a sales perspective, we can kind of start to suss out objections here. Right? We might find out, yeah, Ray, if everything makes sense, I'd love to move forward, but I don't make a decision without my partner, my business partner, my spouse. Hey, Ray, the only thing that would stop me is I'm not sure if I have the finances necessarily available. I might have to shift stuff around, whatever, right? And then I might even tie him down as a little further. If he gave me that specific response, I would say, okay, Bob, let's say we can make everything make sense financially today, and it's an amount that's not going to overdraft your account and that you're comfortable with. At that point, is there anything that would stop you from investing? Right? And then I could just tie it down more specifically to the finances part before we even get into that stuff. Cynthia, you have a question? You can go ahead right now, real quick. Go ahead and unmute before I go down to the next segment.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Audio's great.
Since you're going over objections, what about the one where they come back and say, well, I'd really just like to test the data first just to make sure I know what I'm getting, what I'm paying for.
Yeah, that's a great one. I have a whole segment down on objections. I don't know if I have that one specific, so I'll look when we get down to it. But there's a few different ways you can handle that. So, number one is, hey, I kind of flip it back on the customer. Hey, do you offer test products when people come on board, or do you actually collect revenue when you give your services or product away? Right. So
Well,
first off, sometimes
this is a roofing company.
and ask how many sample roofs they've given. That's
Well,
my point.
yeah, I mean,
Sometimes you have to get a little. Sometimes you have to challenge people a little. A lot. There's a vast majority of businesses that don't give away tests of their product or their service. That's my only point there. So that's one way you can go if you feel comfortable and that's the right audience and you feel like you can challenge them. You can also say, what we have is an entry level package, which really gives you 1 month to test it out for a very, very small investment, just covering my hard costs. So if you're really gung ho about this product and solution, and the only thing stopping you from moving forward, Cynthia, is testing it and feeling confident with you, what if I give you a one-time setup fee to cover my hard costs and I let you try the data for a month? Does that make sense?
yeah, I'm just trying to apply it to the situation I was in with the roofing company. I wanted to sell 1,000 records to them for $3,000, and he came back and says, "Well, I'll just take 200 or 250 records, and I'll give you 1,000." And I was told that that's not a huge enough sample for them to test it out. So I would have had to, according to what you're saying, I probably, would have had to just give him, 1,000 or a couple thousand records for just that $1,000
Yeah, so
to
if you're
test
going
it
off a
out.
specific number of records, what you might do in that case is, all right, what I'm going to do for you, and this is a one-time, so you can try it, Cynthia. And I would not really consider this, but I quoted you $3,000 for those 1,000 records. I'll give them to you for the first time at half cost, $1,500 for that many records, and then you come back to me with your solutions and results, and we'll talk about working together in the future, for future data. So what you could do is really cut your price, but not cut the amount of records. And just do that as a one-time thing and position it that way. This isn't how we're going to continue, but I will give you one time because you have a little bit of skepticism and hesitancy toward the data.
Yeah, I should have done it that way, but that opportunity is long gone now.
Well, yeah, I know. And a lot of the questions you guys are going to ask, not just you specifically, Cynthia, but they're going to be kind of one-off conversations that had a very specific thing. What I'm going through is a general framework and general objections. So you're always going to get those one-offs that are specific, and we can go back through and I can role play and handle it. But like you said, you're probably not going to get that exact same one again. If you do, at least you're versed on a couple of different ways to handle it. I mean, that's the best you can do when you run into a situation like that is role play a couple ways to go at it. Which one really aligns best with you and feels most comfortable? And now next time, if you do get that to come up again, you kind of know how to handle it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. And again, other questions I will certainly get to. She raised her hand and I was kind of at a good stopping point. So it made sense. But if anybody has any other ones, I will be checking the chat and calling on you soon. But let's go down into this a little bit more. So you also might get this early on or maybe later on. Again, what I'm talking about here is early on in the call and to how to kind of suss out objections. And that's what this is doing. So you might say, hey, is there anything that would stop you from jumping in today, Cynthia, to further your business and help you, stand out in the marketplace or whatever? Well, I don't know if there's anything necessarily stopping me, but I usually don't make decisions on a whim, and I like to think them about it a bit, right? So you might get that very early on. All right, totally cool, Bob. Now, if you're going to think about it, what specifically would you want to see before making a decision? Let's hit that now so I can make sure that I cover that and include that as I run through everything today. So you're just kind of get them to say, like, what specifically would you need to be thinking about? And let's talk about that now. That lets us isolate any aspects. I might be thinking about the effectiveness. I might be thinking about the strategy, the approach. I might be thinking about the cost, the ROI, how this compares to other, comparable solutions in the marketplace. So I could get any one of those or a number more, comments or concerns there that are really going to help me take down a note of that right now. And I'm going to kind of customize that into how I pitch and make sure that gets addressed and I position that right a little bit later. So a lot of times what I'm looking for now is little tie downs or highlights of what they're really looking for and what's going to be the driver behind their decision-making factor at the end of the call. Is it going to be a clear ROI? Is it going to be how we stand out? Is it going to be what's different? Is it going to be about our strategy, our approach, right? The more I know early on, the more I can gear my pitch and how I customize what I present to him based around that. Now, right before I get into discovery and situation, Jordan, why don't you go ahead and ask a question that you have here?
Hi. So I'm working with a company that is in the food distribution space and we're running Facebook ads. I plugged in the Audience Labs data and the algorithm is in learning phase. However, they're really looking to book more clients because they want to expand their client base, and sometimes they're on like a week-to-week basis with a lot of their customers.
Okay.
So I pitched them on cold calling with the data set just to get the sales conversation rolling. But they're very apprehensive about cold calling. And at first, I'll think about it, and now they're kind of just wanting to wait and see and wait and see and wait and see. And I'm trying to kind of pitch them on the cold calling because with the data set because it's the obvious, clear solution. But there's some apprehension. I suspect it's because on
Can
the
I ask? Can I ask real quick, Jordan, why it's the obvious, clear application?
because they drive the majority of their bookings from cold calling, but they're calling the restaurants themselves, so they're not always getting in contact with the decision maker.
Okay, so their current process before ever speaking to you or possibly using our data is a cold calling process is what they do primarily, or that's what converts the best.
Yes.
Okay. So then I might agree with you here. Okay. Now, generally speaking, guys, and you probably heard me say this a lot, Jordan, as well as everybody else, I don't recommend cold calling as the best application for the data, generally speaking. But if a business is already set up with that infrastructure, those foundations, and that's how they're already converting a large majority of their business, yes, I would plug in the data into that system. Now, did they get specific with you, Jordan, about why they're hesitant or, or why they don't want to move forward with the cold calling side of things when they're already doing it?
I suspect it's because the reviews, they have a couple of one-star reviews because they had a cold email campaign without a good opt-out process. So people were commenting, they send spam me emails and things like that.
And now have they fixed that and do they have a solid opt-out process?
They just completely stopped running. I think it spooked them from cold outreach in general.
I mean, we're always going to get a bad review here or there for something. Number one, there's very inexpensive review management, softwares and offers out there that companies can and should look into when they have bad reviews, how to minimize those, how to get them less visible, how to sometimes get them removed off the internet. Now, that's not my area of expertise, but I know there's a lot of very inexpensive solutions for that. So, I mean, if that's what they're worried about, that's almost like a totally separate topic and discussion. And something you can always recommend. Hey, I would recommend a company that your size that is really looking at your reviews and puts a lot of stock in those. You might want to look into, a review management service that is always looking and making sure that only the best reviews are out there in the public eye, and they, teach you guys how to reduce or mitigate your bad reviews so not many people are seeing them. Number two, hopefully as a business owner, we should always be learning from bad reviews and optimizing our system. So if I got a bad review talking about that, I would be with my tech team and my messaging team saying, why isn't our opt-out process compliant? Where is it at? How do we beef it up and make it stronger and more, easy for people to opt out? And I would be optimizing that. You're saying it kind of spooked them and they just kind of ran the other way, though?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you could do about that. That's like a company or internally, that's kind of their own fears and insecurities, developing or manifesting from within. There's nothing you can do as a data service provider to help them get over that. Right. But I mean, I would still have a conversation with them. You guys are really hesitant to do this now, and you got spooked for that bad review. So are you just going to let that tank your business and stop the cold calling that's gotten you this success thus far because of this? Right. Sometimes you have to challenge people a little and ask them and get them to really ration this in their head and make a decision for their business. Personally, if I got a bad review from cold calling because I didn't have a good opt-out process and I had one person or a couple complaints even, would it stop my marketing department and my sales department from doing cold calls and bringing in new revenue next month? No, not at all. So I don't know why they're thinking like that. But again, you can also recommend, and you could use that to your advantage. Another thing I might position, if you guys are spooked about the cold calling and got bad reviews and don't want to see that, repeated, why don't you utilize our data into ad campaigns and email and get results that way instead of cold calling? So you can also direct them down a different avenue to implement and reactivate the data.
From a sales standpoint, I'm kind of wondering, how should you push your clients or prospects when they're kind of apprehensive about something? Is it always good to challenge them, or should you take more of an approach where it's kind of like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and those concerns are valid, and I've got them running ads with me anyways, or because I know that having a multi-step process would just improve the outcome and the LTV of the customer. So that's kind of why I'm kind of like, if we want to see the best results, we should take more than one approach, than just running hyper local ads.
And I think to your question there, I think it's actually a combination of the two. So I think what you said after, should I challenge them? And I think the answer is yes, 9 times out of 10. There's always going to be an outlier where you could tell a person that you might not want to challenge for whatever reason. They might be fragile. They might be, you just might want to let them talk and vent. But in a B2B deal specifically, yes, you want to challenge them. But the other thing you said was the preface or the positioning I might give to a challenge so that there's very little friction and it's not confrontational. You can challenge people and you can do it professional and what's in their best interests. For instance, hey, Jordan, you said you didn't want to move forward because you're hesitant about the cold calling. And I totally get where you're coming from. And that's a valid concern. Compliance in the space is certainly on a lot of people's radars, and it should be. Now, let me ask you, just because you're hesitant and you got that one bad review, is that going to stop you guys from cold calling this month and next month and doing what's got your business that far?
No.
Right. So I prefaced it the way you did, professionally and polite, and I hear him, but then I also challenged him, didn't I?
Yes.
And that's what I would do. You have to ask the questions that are really going to get the crux of things. Regardless if you move forward with me today or not, Jordan, what's going to happen to your business if you stop cold calling, knowing that's been your primary acquisition channel over the last year? Right? Like, you got to challenge these people and get them to say, you're right. It's kind of my own fear and my own insecurity. And if I don't overcome it, I'm probably going to lose, I don't know in this case, but let's just say 60% of my business. Let's say that's how they acquired 60% of their deals with cold calling, right? That's not a very smart business decision. And as a business owner, that would be a very, very difficult statement for me to mumble. I got a bad review, so I'm willing to give up 60% of my business going forward.
Right.
That's what we're kind of equating here. It makes no freaking sense once I just broke it down like that. Like, any bad review isn't going to stop me from growing my business 60%, or isn't going to lead me to losing 60% business month in and month end, because now I'm just scared to get another bad review. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot to do with kind of self-imposed, fear or insecurities, or a combination. But you just got to challenge people with a very simple, basic question that's always kind of geared and results in the bottom line of their business. Hey, I've had a lot of scary and bad things happen. I've had bad reviews. I've had chargebacks. I've had investigations. Whatever. Right? Did that stop me from growing my business? No, I learned from them. I optimized. I made my business better, more compliant, more ethical, more integral, whatever. And then I carried on with what got me this far, and I kept looking for new ways to expand. Right. So sometimes it's just having an open, honest conversation about people and trying to relate to them and said, hey, man, we've all had challenges, fears, bad reviews. It didn't stop me from doing what got me there.
Thank you.
Cool. Let's go through a little more of this. So now we get into the discovery or the situation phase. And I always say this is the most important part of a sales call. When this is done right, everything below here in the framework just kind of falls into place, for lack of a better phrase. If we didn't ask the right questions or get in depth as much as needed to some of these questions, meaning you might just get a straight answer and go on to the next question rather than asking the obvious follow-up. That might not always be in the framework. Sometimes, guys, a follow-up question isn't obvious till we hear the initial answer. And then we're like, oh, piggybacking off that, it immediately triggers another question in our mind. If that happens, we go right to that, and you don't go on to the next question in your framework. You go on to the obvious follow-up. That's going to happen sometimes in a discovery or situation phase. And we can't always script that or put it into a framework because they're so circumstantial or, independent to that situation. But, a lot of times when I'm working with a client, so, hey, rep, give me the quick rundown on who you serve, how you make money, and what's your number one objective or goal in the business right now, right? So you can ask an open-ended, say 3 or 4 part question that gets them to just give you a lot of background context. And as I've said, you usually get two types of people when you ask this question. You get the very basic short answer. I serve lawyers. I make my money off, my expertise and my info courses, as well as my consulting. And my goal right now is to grow the business. So they could be very direct and just give you a short answer, or they open up and they tell you everything you ask plus a lot more. Hey, Ray, we've been in business for 11 years. We got a team of 14 members and we're doing about 2 million a year in revenue. Our average ideal client is both coaches and consultants. How we make money is really through our software and then our back end upsells and masterminds. And our number one goal right now, I would say, is just to lower our cost per lead and cost per conversion so we can increase overall profitability in our ads. That's what we're looking for, right? So that's a lot more open-ended answer. That gave me a lot more than I asked for. I now know how many team members, how much revenue, which lets me know a little more. I can now put them into a bucket of how established or sophisticated they are based on that, right? When I set prerequisites for an ideal audience, and some of you guys have heard me teach this, some of you guys just might be new to, but I would say I'm kind of looking for three components when I'm building my avatar. I'm looking for, number one, the basic who, right? Roofers, doctors, lawyers, right? Just the who. Second, I'm setting prerequisites for my ideal clients. So let's say I pick roofers. Well, for me, selling data, I only want roofers with a minimum of 2 locations and 20 team members that have a current marketing and advertising department. And generally speaking, what I found, those are companies that have been in business more than 3 years and do more than 2.5 million in revenue. So now when I'm building audiences, I'm only looking for clients that fit those thresholds and parameters. I really don't want to be speaking to Ray's roofing company that opened 6 months ago and he and his brother do roofs. If you go sell that guy data, he's not going to know what the hell to do with it. He doesn't have a marketing department. He doesn't know shit about marketing outside of maybe some door knockers and some, local flyers and radio or whatever they're doing locally. And they're probably doing canvassing at that point, right? And even the data can be used in that capacity, but those people aren't the ideal fit and aren't going to get a great return. And even if you do sell a company like that data once, odds are they're not going to monetize and get an ROI, and they're never going to call you for it again. So personally, those aren't the deals and the clients I'm ever looking for. I want people that are going to buy the data, get results, and come back and buy more next month, and then come back and buy more next month. And then the 4th month, now they bought enough data and spent enough on ads where the super pixel makes sense. And they're getting enough traffic where I want to upsell them that feature, right? Those are the type of clients I want. So I set prerequisites. And the third thing I always look for in an ideal client is what have they already tried, or what might they try, or who might they pay, other than coming and working with Ray and Audience Lab, or Cynthia and her roofing lead gen agency, or whatever, right? So like, I always look for what have they tried, or what might they try, or who might they pay instead of working with me. And just by kind of knowing those parameters, it gives me a good little understanding of who I really want to be working with and serving. And again, the only reason I went into that much depth is because when this guy just gave me that answer of how many team members, how much in revenue, and how many years I've been in business, that ticks all the boxes of my more established, sophisticated customer that is more likely to succeed with the data. That's who I'm looking for, right? So those are all the things my brain is going to when they're giving me that answer. And of course, I always take like what I call my chicken scratch notes, and I usually have somewhere between 3 and 5 main talking points that I'm going to recap later in the conversation. Right now, during that answer, I would have been writing down the amount of time in business, the team members, the revenue, and their number one thing that they're looking for. That's what I would have took out of that, and that's what would be in my notes. Whichever one, if not more, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those pieces of data and those numbers come back into the conversation later, you would see how I position those back as kind of a tie down to something they said earlier. But cool. So once they give me that long answer, I would also, when those people go more and more in depth, if they answer some of these questions in there, you're not going to ask it again just because it's on your script. You know it's already been answered and you can kind of skip over it, or see if there's a question we need to ask to get a layer deeper, right? I teach this a lot. I say what we get from most clients when we ask a question is a symptom or surface level answer. Sometimes we want to get to the root or the real problem. So we need to ask a question a layer deeper. What don't you like about that? How long have you been trying that? Maybe what do you like about that, right? So sometimes we need to probe a little deeper and ask those, getting from symptom or service level answer to root or real problems and real answers, right? But once I got all that information from this particular guy, next I'd be into, cool, so you've been in business this long, you're doing this much revenue. How many clients are you currently serving? Well, Ray, we're working with 34 clients. Cool. And if everything was working perfectly, how many should you be working with? Or more, maybe a better question here, Bob, what do you have the bandwidth to take on? How many new clients could you be working with? Well, Ray, we're currently working with 36. We could take on at least 50, so another 14. before I had to bump up anything else. We have the bandwidth, the manpower, and the capability to take on a minimum of 14 new clients. Once I got up to 50, I
Make
might
sure to wash your
reinvest and
hands
bring
when
on
you
a
get
new team
back,
member.
get all the
Oop, hold on, gotta
herbicides.
mute that person. So, and then from there, I might, reinvest and bring on a new team member once I have those extra, 14 clients. And that might give me the ability to take on 60 and 70 from there. Of course, that's how people scale, but I'm only asking this to make sure that they have the bandwidth, the capability, and the overall ability to work with new clients. If right now they're like, Ray, we're at wit's end, we have more clients than we can handle, and I have no way to fulfill extra jobs, I don't want to bring on this client. Like, we're looking for people looking to grow and scale using our software, our services, our products, our data. If they're content or, balls to the wall, for lack of a better phrase, where they're at right now, and they can't take on more clients, that disqualifies them right now. And I say, hey, man, that's great. Once you get a little more foundations internally and have more infrastructure that would support you taking on new clients, when that becomes a priority, reach back out to me. In the meantime, I'm going to follow up with a little video and a copy of this call recording, recapping this for in the future. You can go back to this conversation. And I'm also going to include a quick little 5-minute video on how you can use this when you're ready to, start acquiring new clients. Boom. I'm going to cut off the conversation now if somebody tells me they're not serious about growth and scaling, and they don't have the bandwidth or the capability to take on clients. Save me some time, send a recap email, treat them right, and hopefully they come back to us in the future when they are ready. Or maybe they speak to a colleague and they're like, hey, man, you're in a position that you're looking to grow and scale right now. I was just on the call with this guy, Ray, last week. He treated me right. Didn't try to enroll me. I wasn't at a point where I think you might be able to get some help from his businesses. Here's his number, right? So we get referrals out of that. We get future business. Just treat people right. Send over some assets and resources and politely disqualify from your process if they're not the fit. A big part of this script and this framework is pre-qualifying your prospect. Only the people that get to the end and that are ideal fits for our solution, our product, our software, whatever we're offering, only when we're the best person to help this guy and help them get the result, that's when I recommend making an offer. If not, sometime before that throughout the process, we might disqualify them, or sometime near the end of the call, we might just say, hey, Bob, based on where you're at in the business and what you're looking to accomplish, I don't think our software and our platform is the best fit for you now. I don't think you're right at that capability. But what I would do is I would go back in, invest in this, or check out this course or this book. I think this will help you get to the next level, and then come back to me in a couple months once you're there, right? So treat people right, build them a game plan, send over some resources or referrals as to what would help them now, and move on to the next prospect that might be an ideal fit, right? So then we like to get into, how are you currently landing clients? Great, you're using Facebook ads and email. Well, tell me, what do you like about that process, Bob? And maybe on the flip side of things, what don't you ask about that? What don't you like about that process? Let them tell you what they think is working and what they like, or what's not working and what they don't like, right? Mind if I ask just a few more questions? I want to make sure I can actually give you the best recommendations and suggestions here when we get to the end of the call in about 20 minutes, and not just giving you random advice. So is it cool if I just ask you a couple more things to tie down some loose ends? Yeah, sure, Ray, no problem. Right? They want to make sure you're giving them the most applicable, recommendations and suggestions too. So that's how, and that's a great icebreaker kind of in the middle of your discovery phase. If you feel like you're just interrogating, or you're asking questions and they're giving you very short one-word answers, and you kind of feel like, okay, this guy doesn't want to answer questions anymore. This is a little like breakdown, and then getting them to kind of understand why you're asking these questions. And then it reframes them to, oh shoot, I do have to, help and divulge some of this data so Ray can give me the best recommendations and suggestions at the end of the call, right? So once they get a yes there, yeah, sure, Ray, go ahead, fire away a couple more, no problem, right? So are you looking to use this? And guys, this is something we do internally to disseminate. I don't know if you guys do this to your clients. If not, you might want to rephrase this. But with our platform, we like to say, are you looking to use this for your brand, your clients, or potentially both, right? And some of you people on this call, you probably fall into all three of those buckets. Somebody on this call, somebody's looking to use it for themselves, somebody for their clients, a lot of you for both, right? So again, asking the questions to kind of put them into a bucket and say, all right, if I know they're looking to use it for both, when I pitch at the end and I'm positioning and customizing my offer, I'm going to talk about the parts of the software and what I would do to get clients for your business, and then how you can resell this and make profits and get results for your clients. So now I'm going to know to focus on that rather than more just one or the other. Or maybe they said, hey, mostly for my clients, but secondarily for me. Cool. Now when I get to the pitch, I focus 80% on how to get results for their clients and more revenue, and 20% on how they can get better results for themselves. But that lets me know really how I'm going to kind of customize and dictate my pitch. And okay, let's put some numbers on this real quick. So let me know your clients per month. You said you're currently working with 36. Are those coming in each month? Are those retainer? What or what? Yeah, so we get 36 per month. Cool. Average sale. My average order value is $4,200, Ray. Awesome. And how many people do you drive to your website each month? We're driving 3,600 on average. Okay, great, right? So now I have a little more metrics and more data that will let me really determine and lead with. Should I lead with some audiences? Should I lead with some pixel? Is a combination of the two a good fit right here? The more data I have about them, the easier it is for me to identify and then ultimately recommend and suggest that when I get to the end. Now, sometimes this is a quick and easy way to kind of dive into the pain points, right? If I waved a magic wand and fixed one thing in your business, what would it be, right? And they might say, Ray, it's really my ad costs or my targeting or my acquisition process, but it isolates them down to one thing. And then, okay, Bob, so why is that a problem right now? Well, that's a problem right now because, our acquisition cost now, as opposed to last year at this point, has over 2x. There's no way, we can afford to keep doubling our acquisition costs when our margins and what we charge can't go up that much. All right, so you said those were the numbers last year, and that's where they are now. How long would you say that this actually acquisition cost has really been a problem? It didn't seem too alarming last year, and it is now. So when did that become a problem? Well, I mean, slowly but gradually, but I'd say I identified it as a problem, somewhere between 4 and 6 months ago. All right, so it's been a problem for between 4 and 6 months, and you're just now getting on a call with me and looking at solutions. Have you been on other calls? Have you looked at other solutions? Well, I just started looking, Ray, and your ad popped up. I clicked it. It looked like the solution, but no, I haven't really been actively looking. All right, so you identified a problem, and you kind of let it sit and fester for 4 to 6 months. That happens, and now you've just had enough. You've really said, this is a problem, Ray, and now you're on a call looking to take action and solve this. Is that fair to say, Bob? Yeah, that's fair to say, right? So again, because I asked those questions, you didn't see that all in the script there. I just got the answer or the answer he was going to give me or how he positioned, his reply to me. And then I asked the question or two in a follow-up to really tie him back down to, is he willing to move forward today? And is he really fed up with this problem? Because we get a lot of people that we call in the industry tire kickers. They have this problem. They look at solutions and they just kick tires for months and never actually, pull the trigger and buy the car and test drive it, right? So a lot of times that's the way to kind of flesh them out is, all right, so now that you've realized it's a problem, you've been dealing with it for months, you're ready to actually take a stand and move forward and solve this, right? Yes, Ray, I am. All right, that's strong for me right now, because later when I drop the price and he, whatever, gets spooked by it, just all of a sudden goes into retreat mode, like some people do, I can kind of tie it back into, well, you did say this was a problem right now and you were looking to get it solved. So outside of the price, and I know that was maybe a little more than you were thinking here, is there anything else that kind of spooked you or anything else stopping you from wanting to go forward? And then I just tie it down to price and I make that make sense, right? And hopefully we get to that. We're probably going to have to do another lesson. I talk too much, obviously. We're not going to get through this all in the next 7 minutes. So I'm going to go into this last objection right there, which I just talked about a little bit, but I'm going to show you what we have in quotes, and then I'll look back in the chat and see if anyone has questions. And then next Tuesday, we're going to pick up right where we left off. So if you're not on this week's workshop and you show up next week, definitely want to watch the replay in the first half of this, but next week we're going to pick up an impacted problem and hit the rest of this script. And I won't do as much time in the beginning kind of prefacing what I'm going to cover. But lastly, when what I just kind of talked about, got it. So what does the timing look like to you? Like usually when someone says timing, it's not the real reason. So what's kind of underlying to that or what's underneath that? So that's another way to, that's another phrase or approach or, word track that you can use there that was differing from the other one I said, but we're still both going down the same path. You can see what I was just talking about a minute ago before I went down to here as to asking him, isolating the time frame and making sure he's agreeing that it is a problem and he wants it solved now. Same thing, just a different approach or different terminology to use. Or if the perfect plan and support were in place, would now be the time? What would need to change? Right? That's another very powerful question. So the prospect's thinking to himself, well, if he showed me the perfect plan and he showed me he backs it up with support where I don't have to email 10 people back and forth to get help or whatever, and it all makes sense and seems seamless, would now be the time? And they really have to ask themselves that, right? It's something they almost wrestle with for a minute. And if they are serious about growing their business and serious about solving this problem, very few people are going to say, yeah, now would be the time if that's clear. And again, then you don't even have to answer the second part of it. That's also why they might say that, because if they say no, now's not the time, they really need to think of and come up with an actual reason, not just a brush off or some lie about what would need to change to convince you that they don't need this problem, or sorry, this problem solved, so they don't need this software or solution or data or offer, right? So yeah, all these little questions that go in, if you can see what's happening here, why do we have a little objection breakdown, or in between, in two different areas so far, when we never even got to the pitch of the offer yet? Because what I'm doing is prefacing and overcoming objections before they come an objection later. So these are small, what I would call micro objections that I bring up and I try to isolate before I ever get to them being an objection at the end of the call. That's a philosophy and a strategy that a lot of salespeople don't even realize or don't implement, that half or more of the objections they get at the end of the call could have been avoided or overcome prior to them even becoming an objection, if they went through some of these exercises and asked some of these questions after intro, after discovery. And you'll see that mixed in a few times here. That's another difference between this and the old script. And the old script, that was somewhat built in, but we didn't do a sidebar and we didn't really highlight it. It was more just from a high level psychology perspective that was happening if you knew what to look for and see. And that's not super effective, because 80% of people that go through that script don't really know what to look through and see there. So they're not really sure why they're asking that question there. I'm showing you now a little more specifically. That's just kind of a sidebar where we're prefacing and trying to suss out and overcome this objection now, so we don't have to deal with it. And the other thing that helps do, guys, have you ever got to the end of the call and then got multiple objections? And it's so hard to overcome multiple at once. As I always teach people, when you get multiple, you need to isolate and overcome and then move on to the next one. A lot of people make the big mistake of, Ray, now's not the right time, I got to ask my partner, and it's too much money, right? That all comes at you at once, and they try to combat it with one, I shouldn't say one, but one statement, overcoming or rebutting all three objections. Very difficult. I would never recommend doing that. And even if you do it right, it's still very, very unlikely to be successful where you're going to overcome all three objections. But if you isolate them, you're on the same page and you get them to agree, all right, Ray, so yeah, you're right with my spouse. She probably would approve of this, especially since, I'm 10 out of 10 that it's a solution and it will help me get to the next level of my business. So you're right. I think she does have my support. Cool. Now you said also then now's not the right time, right? So I could dive back into that. Really? Because you told me earlier that now was a serious time, that you've been struggling with this for X amount of months, and you said now's the time, and that's why we're on this call. What changed between 20 minutes ago and now that we're talking about the price, right? So again, you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm tying them down to one of the little sidebar objections I did earlier and saying, you told me this 20 minutes ago, now you're telling me this. What's changed in the last 20 minutes? And then he usually concedes there and goes, yeah, you're right, Ray. I was kind of, saying now's not the time because I just really wanted to think about the expense. But you're right. I did say it's a problem. I can't change my mind. It certainly is. And I've already admitted that. And if I'm not admitting what a problem is, I'm never going to get it solved. So I kind of have to own up. And they start to, again, have their own self-realizations. What I try to teach you guys, this script and framework does so brilliantly, is it gets the client to say the answer to, or to spit out exactly what you want to scream to them. There's a lot of times we want to scream, you need this product, you need this solution, you need to get this problem solved, but it never matters what we say. If we can ask the question to get him to kind of think about it in his head and then say it out loud, he's always going to believe what comes out of his mouth, right? He is himself. He can't say, I said that and I don't believe what I'm saying, right? Very hard to say that, you know what I mean? But it's very easy to take what some sales guy says in and out one ear and say, yeah, he's just saying this with an objective of collecting cash at the end of this call. This guy has a bias on the outcome of this call. Well, the person themselves, they're going to believe everything that comes out of their mouth. So I'm using all these questions and asking these and sussing out objections so I can tie them back down to the words that they said out of their own mouth, and they admit they need the solution. They're ready to move forward, and it's only their insecurities or their own fears that are stopping them from moving forward. Much easier when they say it and it comes out of their mouth and you can see like, yeah, man, so you can see what I'm saying here, Bob. That does make sense to you now. Yeah, right. And then you guys could chuckle about it, which just totally kind of cuts all the sales resistance or tension in that part of the conversation. When we challenge them, you have a little giggle about it and say, okay, so now that you're certain your partner would approve this and would have your back on this, Bob, and you're certain that now is the right time, if I can make it make sense financially right now, where I'm not going to overdraft you and not going to take food off your table or your mortgage payment away this month, is there anything that would stop us from moving forward? Well, no, right? If you can make it make sense financially, I think this is a solution and I really need to get this problem solved. And then I can just dive into, breaking down finances, which will be covered in part 2 of this. So next week, we're going to go to part 2, guys. Everybody that's on today's call, I've already shared this script as being number 9 in the document that's already dropped here in the chat. But I know some of you guys came late. And again, go through this on your own time. I didn't cover and teach on all of it. I'm going to do lesson 2 next week. But as I promised at the beginning of the call, the link now in the chat right here, just posted at 4 p.m. Eastern, is the link to this script itself. So yeah, Will, you were asking, hey, just joined. There's that link again. I just got the same objection. I'm going to read back to these real quick. Keith, the way I look at it is try before you buy, right? They try one audience and upsell them the daily refreshes. That'll intrigue them. That is certainly one way to go about it. I think you and I kicked this around on our call and talked about this a little, if I'm not mistaken. That might have been with somebody else, but that's exactly a great way to position it. I like the wording and the terminology used there. Like, hey, you could try this audience once, but then once it starts delivering you results, we're going to be doing daily updates and refreshes, and we can also upload new audiences as needed. So yeah, you can try out one, but you have to pay for the actual continuation of the refreshes and the updated audiences. And the next audience that you want to, target, right? Tara went to say, position yourself strong, have what they want. Yes, very well said. Very well said. You picked up on that. Cynthia, you typed 1 in the chat. So was that after your question? Did you have another one? Is she still on here? I got to stop screen share so I can see everybody that's on the call. Okay, so Cynthia must have hopped off. I saw she typed a 1 in the chat, and maybe I answered her question. Maybe I missed it and she had to hop off. Cool. So, yeah, there's a link. You got it, Will. If we do that, we're wasting credit and decline moving forward. So, ask your question, Will. Just unmute and ask it, just so I'm clear.
Oh, hey.
Go ahead.
Hey, in regards to that comment, so if we do try it before they end up paying, if they do decline, is it worth going that method?
Like, are you saying if they decline your initial offer, is it
For those of
worth
us that have like
offering
limited
that?
audiences, if they
Sorry, say again. I didn't mean to talk over
pretty
you.
much. Yeah,
Okay,
pretty much.
there's a delay.
What you just reiterated.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I always say that, it's a great question, just to specify for anybody else. I don't bring that up right away. I don't lead with that. But if the main thing stopping them from moving forward, I should say, if the only thing stopping them from moving forward is really just not, wanting to see results and not being willing to pay, I will go. My downsell is always, as I've told many of you guys before, a one-time setup fee that at minimum covers my hard cost. Try the audience, and then I'm going to get back to you in whatever time frame we set, 15 days, 30 days. We'll talk about how it worked, and then if you've seen results, we'll talk about how we can work together on a future plan, right? So I start with I just say a one-time setup or a one-time charge that covers my own costs off the list I have to pull. And I'm just going to charge you that. I'm not going to charge you what I would normally charge. Try it out, yada, yada, yada. Or you can even go down to, you could try one. Again, I don't like to do any free stuff personally. I can't remember the last time I did a free offer here at Audience Lab. We did a small little 1 week free trial, but then we already had credit card embedded. And if they didn't automatically cancel and enrolled them. So that kind of made sense for us. Most of ours aren't set up that way in these DaaS agencies. So my downsell, even at minimum, is a one-time setup fee of somewhere between 500 and 1,000. I would never go less than 500. I'd say up to 1,000 is fair, based on what you think they're willing to pay. So 750 is kind of the sweet spot there. Hey, we don't have to do a full contract. You don't have to buy multiple audiences. Will, let me just do a one-time setup fee of 750. That covers all my hard costs and my team's time to pull your audience and get it uploaded into your marketing campaigns. You go try it out, and let's go meet in 21 days after we start running this and assess the results and see if we want to work together more. Is that fair? Right? So that's how I go at it, Will. Now, again, you can go if you think, if you're still going to get resistance there and you really, really want the client, and if you just show them an audience, it's likely going to be a home run. I might go as low as trying the free one and then just hitting them on the upsells, but I still want to at least recoup somewhere between 500 and $1,000 just to give them their first, deliverable, for lack of a better phrase. Don't know if I pronounced it right. Hopefully I did.
Have a follow-up to that.
Oh, go ahead, Will. Sorry, there's a delay. Go ahead.
Okay, so now, since I'm working in mainly jewelry industry, multiple industries, how do I This might be more of a media buying side of a question, but how would I go about selling that audience to across multiple companies in a way where they wouldn't end up being direct competitors?
So you're saying the same list or the same audience to multiple different jewelry companies?
Reducing the quality of the audience? Yeah, if I were to
Okay.
go about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to go about it. Generally speaking, no two audiences are ever going to be the same. They can be, and you can do what you said. But why I say that is even jewelry store that specializes in Rolex and diamonds in New Jersey is going to have a different audience than a jewelry store that specializes in gold and timepieces in New York. Those are going to be separate audiences, generally speaking. So you want to be building your
Yeah.
audience custom to each particular client with their geographical and keyword parameters. Now, if you find that an audience does fit multiple and it makes sense, what you want to do is be very honest. Hey, these are leads that any jeweler has access to, or you can buy exclusivity for X price. So that gives you an upsell option there, Will.
Okay.
If they
Yeah, that
want
makes sense.
exclusivity, you can say this list is only for you. If you pay me this, I'll make sure to give none of these leads and none of this list to another jewelry provider in your area. Now, if you just want my general
Okay.
data, anybody can get access to that, and you might have competition for those leads.
All right, so it would be probably better to make it exclusive
I think it would be better to offer an exclusivity
by
upsell if you
location
think
then,
you're
right?
going to have
'Cause I
audience
noticed
from
that
multiple.
most jewelers. Okay,
I'm
that makes
sorry.
sense because I know that most jewelers that I speak to, they're mostly interested in boosting engagement ring campaigns. So that's something that would be on the the more common side of things, but I wouldn't want to oversell to the point where I dilute the quality of it kind of
Correct.
deal.
Correct. And what
All
I
right,
would
so
want to know, and do you know this about your client? Will do a majority of the jewelers you talk with sell more in person in location or more online and like e-shopping?
it's kind of a mix.
Okay, because that would also vary, how I look at
A
that.
lot of them have a
And
lot of local sales and a lot yeah. Yep.
so for the local ones, those
The
lists need
onboard
to
one that
be
where they pretty much
shit. We keep talking over each other
sorry to
because
cut
there's
you
a
off.
delay. Go ahead again.
There's just a bit of a lag on my end. But pretty much I'm about to onboard one on Thursday where they realize that they reached the kind of like they got to them at the right point where they know they have to scale online. So I want to do that for them, and then I want to apply that same deal to some other jewelers. I just want to make sure that anyone else I onboard for that specific audience at least
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. And what I would say is when you find out that it's more
is not going to be taking away sales from this guy.
Yeah, if their emphasis is more local in store, again, that's more about exclusivity and giving them a custom list and probably selling them on exclusivity. They don't want to share that with other jewelers. Now, if you find out that they want more of the data, or this client gets more in online orders where they can ship anywhere in the country. I know in the world, but our data is US. So let's just say within the country.
Yeah.
Now, those lists I would never really offer exclusivity on. So that's
Okay.
the
Yeah,
difference.
makes sense.
I would make that more of an offer for my more in-person local type of audiences.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks,
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'll let you get
No
to the
problem.
other
Hopefully that
person.
helps. I'm going to answer yours real quick, Jordan, and then I'm going to get to you,
Question now.
Manuela.
Thanks,
Hopefully I
Rick.
pronounced that right. If not, you can correct me in a minute. Jordan, you said in the comments here, do you recommend that we tell the prospect the name of the data service? Sometimes I get the objection, oh, I'll check out Audience Lab at the end of the call. Yeah, I would never recommend mentioning Audience Lab, to be very honest with you. Now, I've got this. This is more of like a pre-client objection that I've heard from a lot of people and something they built into their own heads. And I've had people reach out to me that clicked on my ads, that have seen my content, that are interested in Audience Lab. But hey, Ray, my hesitation with signing up for Audience Lab is why wouldn't my customer, the end buyer, just go around me and go right to you guys? So there's a couple main reasons. Number one, that has still only happened. We've been in business 3+ years, going on 4 years now. That still only happened twice. So think about it. All the agencies we work with and all the clients they've sold, there's only been 2 instances where we found somebody circumvented and went around a client and bought from us. The reason being, number one, we don't sell to brands and advertisers themselves. We don't market to them, and we don't sell to them. So anybody you're worried about going around us, we don't want them. They don't hit our funnel. They're not in our advertising. They're not in our marketing. They're not going to get on our sales team's calendar. Number two, If they ever mention or tell us that they spoke to somebody that's an Audience Lab DaaS agency and now they want to come to us for a cheaper price, we will disqualify them and refer them back to that person. So those are two things from my end. Now let me address it from your end there, Jordan. Now, from your end, this is how I would address it when they're like, hey, Jordan, where are you getting the data from? Well, actually, I paid for a licensing fee to the top data feed out there in the industry. So I'm working with one of the biggest players in the marketplace. Sorry, I have a non-disclosure agreement, but I signed a license agreement to get the data at wholesale so I can bring it to you guys at cost. Right? That's how I would combat that if you're getting that question. I wouldn't say I'm a reseller for Audience Lab. I bought a bulk package and I can sell it to you, at wholesale or whatever. I would say it more like I have a licensing key with one of the biggest data manufacturers and more importantly, the highest historical accuracy. You want accurate data, right, Mr. Customer? Yeah, I do. Well, I have the licensing key that you would have to pay thousands and thousands for, and I can sell you lists or pixels as needed at wholesaling, right? So hopefully that answers your question, Jordan. Now, Manuela, if I pronounce that right, if not, you can correct me, but go ahead, unmute and ask your question there.
Hey, hi. Excuse my voice. I have an allergy.
No problem.
It's Manjula, but you can call me
Manjula,
MJ.
okay. I wouldn't have got that, sorry.
Manuela, whatever you like, as long as you call me in time for lunch.
Yeah,
I'm
there you
good.
go.
All right, so I have a client that is questioning the ability to use the data on Google Ads, right? Because Google's platform says that first-party data, but only if you have collected it yourself or someone has collected it specifically for you and the customer is aware that it was collected for you. And I'm not sure how to answer that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, our data does comply with those Google Ads compliance. And just to give you a little more in-depth insight, if you want, and I would recommend this, either hit up an upcoming media buying workshop or message Jeremy Garcia specifically. He can give you like the in-depth details and what you can share with a customer. I'm not a full-time media buyer. I do know our data qualifies as first-party in-market opt-in consent data, meaning that everybody that's within our super graph, whether you got them from an in-market audience, whether you got them from the enrichment feature, whether you resolve them as an identity from the super pixel, if they're in our super graph, they did tick the box that says they agree to share their data with us and our partners. Hopefully that answers your question. Jeremy can go much more in the specifics and get you the fine print that can like really put your client at ease. I don't have access to that because I'm not a full-time media buyer, but I know 100% our clients and us personally are using this data in Google Ads.
Yeah, because I looked up Google Ads policy as well, and they clearly state that it has to be data you collect yourself, or if someone collects it on your behalf, they have to be aware that it's being collected specifically for you.
Yeah,
So,
and our platform does cover that. When anybody that opts in, they do tick a box saying, I agree to share my information, and they are aware. Do they always remember they did that? I don't know. We can never guarantee that, but they did 100% do that. Again, if I was the best person asking, I could go a lot more in depth, but I would highly recommend getting with Jeremy Garcia and getting his explanation. He can just go in a lot more depth about it than I can, but I know it's compliant for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just not my full-time area of expertise, so I'd rather refer you to who it is, on my team. But yeah,
Cool.
either
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you can either shoot him a DM within school, or I know 3 times a week he runs those media buying workshops. He can give you a person-to-person answer, and you can break down the transcript or whatever if you need. So whatever's easier for you. That's Jeremy Garcia. He runs our media buying workshop, Keith, 3 times per week. So yeah, I think Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if I'm not mistaken. But you can go back and check the the calendar schedule there in the school community. All right, guys, I already went a bit over, and I got to go prep for my next call.
Thanks.
So I will have this recording and this replay uploaded to School within the next 2 hours, as I do every Tuesday, and we will cover the rest of that new framework next Tuesday on the same session. So we'll see you then. Thanks for everybody's participation, attention, and questions. I fully appreciate when these are a little more collaborative and you guys have questions for me. So thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye.